Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Hey, so welcome to today's show. It's Tuesday. This is going out live on Mintwave Radio. If you've already got the Alexa skill, you could just ask her or go to the website above, mintwave-radio.com, to download it. And if this is via podcast, then you can also download the app for Apple and Android for Podbean. Feel free to take a look at our whole week's schedule. Feel free to subscribe to any that take your fancy. Now, today's episode is 182, and we have Matt Findora today, and he's a mindset coach. We're going to be talking about how to overcome victim mindset. I'm your host, Karen Roberts, helping coaches just get their message heard to the people who need to hear it. Now, Matt is, after one significant moment, really, he changed his life. Matt joined the US Marine Corps and served 10 and a half years. While in, he worked as an air traffic controller and continues to do that as a civilian. He works now as a mindset coach, helping young men overcome the victim mindset so that they can achieve purposeful life goals. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Karen.
Okay, so 10 and a half years in the Corps. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So what made you make that choice then? What was that significant moment that you talk about there?
So for me, I grew a little bit the backstory before we get to the story. So my family we grew up poor, this negative atmosphere, and that victim mindset. However, I didn't really realize it till that event happened. Because we grew up poor, it was my senior year in high school. It was time to take the ACT, SATs, and everything. My older brother had to pay for me to take the test. And so we got the time wrong, though. So we showed up late to take the ACT. And because of that, they wouldn't let us take it. A couple weeks after that, I was in lunch and I was wearing this backpack that I got for free in the mail. It said Marines. And somebody came up to me and asked, "Hey, have you ever considered joining?" And I was like, "No, my goal was going to college, focus on that, not go to the military." He's, "Hey, we're going to go work out today if you want to come join us." I was like, I don't know what got into me, but I was like, you know what? Sure. I have a gym. We have this little gym in our apartment. I have no idea how to use anything. I really would love to learn to work out. So yeah, let's go do it. After the day was done, I went home, ate some food. They came, picked me up, and we drove past the gym to the park. And this was at the height of P90X. And if you don't know what P90X is, it's this hit circuit. You're essentially doing this circuit course around the park. So that's what we were going to do. And right before the final exercise, everything that I ate beforehand came back up. And so the person who was leading this exercise was somebody who had recently graduated from boot camp. And, "Hey, it's okay. Take it easy. You're weak. You just threw up. I understand." But the guy who invited me was in the same group with me. He's like, "What are you doing? Push yourself. Like, that's what we're here." And I was like, you know what? You're right. What's the worst that can happen? I already threw up. So I pushed myself through that exercise and I didn't do a lot. But what that made me realize was that I'm much more capable than what anybody else tells me that I am, or what I even believe I am. So it made me realize, hey, instead of pointing the blame, hey, this stuff happened, like I could take ownership of my own life and do things my own way to the best of my abilities. And so that's when I was like, made the decision, I'm going to join the Marine Corps.
Wow. But that is so true, because we are the ones that put the limits on ourselves, aren't we? Everybody, absolutely everybody, anybody listening to this can do so much more if they wanted to, but it's their own minds that are holding them back. Is that right? So what happened from then? What made you then totally decide to, okay, now I know what was holding me back. I know that I can overcome it. So how did you get then to the next stage?
I think what part of that wasn't necessarily just that moment, but what led up to that moment, which was being open to opportunity. When we hold ourselves back and this opportunity comes up, it's so easy to just be like, no, that's hard, that's challenging, that's different. I want to be familiar, I want to be comfortable. That's what I'm going for. I want to sit down, I want to watch the TV. Like, I love the show, I want to keep watching it. I don't want to go to the gym, I don't want to go for a run. So being open to the opportunity of anything else that's out there, that could be something as simple as changing the food that you eat, or going for a walk instead of going straight to sleep, reading a book before you go to bed, waking up first thing instead of looking at your phone, you meditate, finding an opportunity to change things up. And what that also helps is increase your neuroplasticity. It helps focus on that.
On paper, that sounds really simple, right? It's I come from the fitness world, giving somebody a workout to do. Well, yeah, on paper, that's easy. There you go. That's your workout. That's what you do every day. But, big but, they don't necessarily do it. They may want to do it. They may want the result that is going to come from doing this new routine. But somehow they might start for a little bit, but then they stop. So what is going on there?
So usually what that means is that you see something that you want, but you're not getting to the root of the original problem. So what that means is, why is it you want to make the change? Why do you want to start going to the gym? If you don't have that why understood, then after day 3, you're going to be like, this is, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this anymore. This is hard. So if we look at the root and find the purpose of why we're doing what we're doing, it makes the journey that much more acceptable, not necessarily easier, but we're willing to accept those challenges a lot more than if we didn't understand why we're doing what we're doing.
But there's more to it, isn't there? Because this is why how many people sign up to a year's gym membership and do not turn up? These businesses would be shut down. Or the flip side of that, if everybody actually turned up every day who was signed up for the year, there wouldn't be enough space. So they almost they rely on, they know that the probability is whatever the percentage, I'm sure they've got stats somewhere because they'll know, it'll be on spreadsheets, right? A percentage of people are not turning up every day to go to the gym, even though they've signed up. So yes, you've got to have your why, but there's more to it. This is mindset. We know that mindset is a thing, is a driving force behind it. But a lot of people will want the thing, they will want the result, but somehow something is holding them back from actually getting up and doing it consistently. Of course, if they don't have a coach.
Yes. So when I do my coaching, there's a handful of different things that I focus on. Purpose is probably one of the most important things because that's your starting point, right? After that, we have to figure out what's our action plan. How do we actually get to that? So in the sense of, if we're using the gym as an example, okay, how many days a week am I going to do? What am I doing? Because it's easy to just go to the gym and say, hey, I'm working out, when you actually have no idea what you're going to do. You're going to look around like, I have no idea what to do. So when we begin to create goals and set that action plan forth, we can actually start committing to that. While we're also doing that simultaneously, what I like to do is create a vision board. And that helps us visualize, again, that kind of connects the purpose with the goals. Hey, this is why I'm doing this. This is, in this, again, in the gym example, what's his name? Michael Matthews. I followed him for a while. Bigger, Leaner, Stronger was his program. And one of his first things was, look for the body type that you want and put it somewhere, because you're going to start looking at yourself. You're not going to see results because every single day you see yourself in the mirror. You're not going to see the change that you're actually making. Other people might see that change after a week or something, after not seeing you for a while. You're not going to see that change. So what is that end goal? What is it you want to look like? And that's going to be that end goal for you. Now we have to create the habits and the routines to get to that point. So how often are you going to go to the gym? What leads up to that? Where do you put, so if you're going to go work out in the morning, Where's your gym clothes going to be? Make sure you put that out in front of you. Set yourself up for success by creating these small little habits that build into your routine. And now your routine is, you have this regular routine of what it is that you're trying to do, helps you keep that discipline of accomplishing your goals.
And that's it, isn't it? It's the habit. So I suppose, yeah, vision boards, I think, are underestimated, do you not think? Because, we are visual creatures and we do need to have that. We do not need to have it somewhere where we can see it every single day, because otherwise we're going to just go back and run our old programming, which is just going to set us back to our old habits, because we're habitual creatures, right?
Mhm.
And just because we start something new, it's quite fascinating to me that we all want change, but many are so resistant to change because they just want to be on autopilot
Mhm.
and run that backstory, but they still want the results that would come from the new habits, which I suppose is why these companies make so much money, like these weight loss companies. I'm not going to name them, but certain ones, because they know that people will just fall off the wagon, which, yes, that's why mindset needs to be a part of it. It's not just
Mhm.
about getting the routine. It's not just about that. It's not even just about getting personal training. It all starts with mindset. But when you're talking about the victim mindset, what do you mean in particular? Explain that whole concept.
So, victim mindset is essentially that person that you see who can't take responsibility for their own actions. They start blaming their circumstances on other people. They start saying life is happening to me instead of life is happening for me. So they take zero responsibility for their own actions, for their own life. They feel that they're stuck. They can't get any movement toward what it is that they want, because a lot of them don't really know what it is that they want. They see this one thing, oh, I want this. Oh, I'm not going to be able to get that. Or a lot of times they'll start being defensive when getting constructive criticism. So you might not, they may, maybe they do take accountability, but when you give them that constructive criticism, they get defensive instead of actually accepting the feedback that they're actually getting. They cut off that feedback loop for them. And sometimes they're also that person who is quick to judge others for their successes, their failures, or whatever it is. Oh, ha, they didn't get what they wanted because of this. Instead of looking in the mirror of, okay, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong?
And that's sometimes a hard pill to swallow, isn't it? But
Mhm.
that's step one, isn't it? You said that acceptance. We have to accept where we're at. We have to, yeah, it's easy to blame everybody else, but then you are going to be, it makes sense. You are going to be stuck because you can't change everybody else. You can only change yourself. So it starts, but where does all this conditioning come from, do you think?
So there's that handful of things that I've seen. A lot of times, what could happen is some kind of PTSD, some kind of post trauma that happened that was never resolved. Whether that was like something, maybe abuse or something like that. Sometimes that happens, or you felt at some point you felt betrayed, whether that was a friend or a family member. Something happened and it didn't go according to plan. So then you start expecting the worst to happen all the time. You get in that Murphy's Law. Anything bad that can happen will happen. Or you have codependency where you're in a situation where you have to depend solely on somebody else. And a lot of times that comes with, if you have somebody who is, let's say, an alcoholic, somebody who has some kind of addiction problem, you sense this codependency where I have to help this person. Like they're dependent on me for this, but they're acting the way they are. And you start blaming yourself for their actions. And then one other one is manipulation, which actually stems from some kind of narcissistic behavior, and you get manipulated into believing that you're not worth as much as somebody else is, especially in that it goes hand in hand with the codependency, where you start believing in yourself less. Your self-confidence, your self-esteem starts going down, and now you become codependent on the narcissist.
Oh, I recognize that. Until you break free, Matt. So with what you do, how do you work through the mindset struggles and create a growth mindset? Because yeah, being a victim, we know that's not going to work. That's all that poor me, nothing's going to come from there, or nothing good or worthwhile is going to come from there other than maybe more of the same. So what can people do to change this to a growth mindset?
So, one of the first things that I do is I ask a very important question, which I learned, and I love this question. It's what makes your heart sing? Because it's not what makes you happy, because there's a lot of things that can make you happy, but what gives you that feeling where you're so happy that you could just sing, you could just do whatever, because that's what you're going to be most passionate about. So then once you're able to actually focus on what you're passionate about, some of those things where things aren't going your way or whatever, you actually have something new to focus on, something that actually brings you that joy. And then we focus on creating that as your purpose moving forward. And then we also have to focus on the emotional intelligence of things. So that's accepting this is how I feel, but how can I work through these feelings where I'm more accepting of who I am? How do I get to the point to where I'm myself and I'm comfortable in my own skin? So that could be through meditation, visualization, journaling is probably one of the most important ones. And then focusing on practicing gratitude, finding those reasons of why you're happy instead of focusing on the things that aren't making you happy.
Again,
Help.
we're conditioned, aren't we? We're conditioned to, generally speaking, unless you're aware of this, because at the end of the day, it's only if you've been introduced to it, you learn this stuff. If you've read a book, if you've been introduced, if you've just gone through the system pretty much without learning this stuff, right? This is just my opinion, I would say in general, people have been conditioned to expect the worst, to not have a growth mind. We're not really conditioned through school to have a growth mindset. Do you
Mhm.
think? Is
Yeah,
that Would that be a fair
Completely
comment?
agree. Oh yeah. So our brains aren't built for growth at all. Our brain is built for survival. It's because it can think, it's telling a body like, "Hey, what are we doing? This is uncomfortable. We shouldn't be doing this. We could get hurt. Hey, here's all these 10 different things that could go wrong. Here's some fear. Let's put that in you too." To try to just protect yourself and your body, because your brain doesn't want to get hurt, it doesn't want the body to get hurt. So it's going to show you, hey, this is what's familiar, this is what's comfortable, let's just stay in this lane, let's just do this, instead of, hey, instead of becoming uncomfortable with being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable.
We don't The brain doesn't want that. So it's consistent, hey, this is what I'm going to work on, that discipline of, I need to get better at this, let's get better at this, let's go. And you have to remind yourself every single day. There's not going to be a day where it's like, you know what, I'm not going to focus on this, whatever happens. There has to be some kind of drive behind there that says we need to move forward, especially if you're suffering from a victim mindset or the negative aspects of life. You have to remind yourself it's okay. Like, we don't have to necessarily focus on that. Let's just keep moving forward.
And that's you said it just there, the fact that this takes practice.
Mm.
This takes practice. That means daily gratitude list, daily journaling, because I suppose, because of, maybe it depends how old you are. At my age, you've got to practice it every day. Because of the conditioning, because of until I was introduced to all this, it was not spoken about. I suppose in some religions, I suppose things like saying grace is gratitude, isn't it? It's a gratitude thing. But if you're not in that kind of thing, if you wouldn't have grown up, it's not really something that was talked about. It wasn't spoken about in school. It certainly wasn't spoken about as something we all should do, and it's beneficial to us. I get it completely as a parent. Right. When your
Mhm.
kids, when your kids are little and you take them out for a great day out, and then, they're crying, and then you think, I'm not going to do this again. When they're not grateful, you don't really feel like doing anything again.
Yeah.
When people are grateful, it wants you to do more. It totally makes sense. That's why it is a universal law. It is. Yeah, that's the way it goes, isn't it? But it's never been spoken about as an important practice to do. That's going to be the benefit of all, not just you, because there's going to be a spillover effect.
Mhm.
You're grateful, you're going to raise your vibration, you're going to give more to other people. That's going to raise it. You have this ripple effect, but it wasn't taught to us. So what else could be to encourage people? A lot of people have heard of journaling or meditating. Again, they might have heard of it, they might not be doing it. Big
Mhm.
difference between knowing and doing.
I would say everything we do, and I feel like this is more of a more recent realization for myself. Everything that we do, especially when it comes to a victim mindset, to change that to a growth mindset or anything, starts with love. And so when you begin to love yourself, like you said, that energy just starts to transfer to other people. You start seeing it in other people. You start seeing in the things that you do. You look in the mirror like, wow, you know what? I really love myself today. And when you make that connection of love between yourself and between others, that victim mindset starts to just fade away because you're like, hey, like I did make progress. Maybe it was like one step today. Maybe my goal was 10,000 steps, but I had a late start to my day and I only got 5,000. You know, that was a very intentional 5,000 steps that I did it. And I love the fact that I didn't let the slow day stop me and I still did something to help myself and to love myself. And I think that's one of the most important qualities and characteristics that helps you get through that victim mindset because if there's no love behind what you're doing, you're just going to keep falling back to that victim mindset. Life is happening to me, it's not happening for me.
Yeah, big. Because I suppose, again, down to how I suppose society has, I know it depends where you live, but I'm pretty sure it's probably similar over there as to over here. Again, it was thought of as, yeah, you shouldn't celebrate every win. That's negative. That's you're showing off or you're blowing your own trumpet. But the opposite is true. Like we say, we can it's so easy when you're in that autopilot. You could have a brilliant day, everything's going perfectly, or just everything's working, and then one thing happens. And what do people tend to focus on? That one thing. They might get to work and talk to their mates about that one thing that happened. They might get on their phone to their mum and repeat what happened. It's amazing that throughout the whole day, all of the things that could have gone wrong and didn't, we can get complacent, can't we? And then if something does go wrong, then the focus is on that. Whereas if we want to turn things around, we've got to review the day and look at, yeah, like you say, it doesn't have to be a massive win, but actually look back and give yourself a pat on the back for what you've achieved. And you use another word that I think is so important is being intentional, because otherwise we are just responding to life rather than realizing actually we create our lives, but we have to be intentional. So do you, for instance, for you personally, do you have a more specific morning and evening ritual, if you want to call it that you do?
No, not yet. That's something that I'm still working on myself. I would say one of the most important things for me, if I want to be intentional about my day, is at nighttime, I set at least three things, most important things I need to get done the next day, because your morning routine starts the night before. So you can actually, hey, this is what I'm going to accomplish instead of waking up. What am I going to get done today? You've already have that prepared for you. And then when you wake up, don't look at your phone for at least 30 minutes to an hour because that it's your brain starts to focus on being reactive to how other people are thinking and how other people are feeling and what other people are doing, that you're not becoming intentional about what it was you planned for the night before. So for me, one of the most recent changes that I made to make sure that happens is I got an alarm clock instead of using my phone as my alarm, because easily once you like go, hey, you turn off your alarm on your phone, you're like, oh, what's going on my phone, because I could see all my notifications. Instead, hey, I don't have my phone in the room, like I'm just focusing on this. All right, I get up and I can wait 30 minutes to an hour to touch my phone. One of the first things I do, read one chapter of something, because that starts you the learning process for the day of, oh, I'm focused on creating that neuroplasticity. I'm focused on, I'm going to learn something today and I'm just going to continue learning something throughout the day. That way, when you go to bed at night, you're like, hey, no matter what happened, I learned something today.
Great advice. And I like the fact that it's only 3, because some people can write these lists. And we know that if you wrote a list of 10 things and say you completed 7, you wouldn't get the dopamine hit that you would get if you'd written 3 and you completed 3. You know, that there's a physiological, there's things going on, man, in the body when that happens. You're releasing hormones and those feel good factors. But again, people can put too much pressure on themselves. So rather than writing a whole list, that's brilliant. Just 3, because we can all complete 3 things. Everybody can complete 3 things. And there's something about crossing those things off, aren't there? And the problem, you're right, I love that with the alarm clock, because yes, that's possibly something that might even get my daughter. Because yeah, we are in the world of social media and the tech, and it's wonderful. Wouldn't be in business without it. However, the flip side of that are all the notifications. I have to say, I have my phone off for the majority of the day when I'm working. It's do not disturb. Otherwise, there'll be WhatsApp notifications. We've just got so many different ways of communicating: email, phone, SMS, Facebook message. You can get a little bit overwhelmed. And I suppose for some people, I would have thought for anybody suffering with PTSD, that could be a trigger. And so obviously we need certain things to maybe, depending on what your business is. However, yeah, you're right. First thing in the morning, self-care time, if you can. I know it would depend on what time you go to work. And if you choose, it's easier if you choose your schedule. I choose my schedule, so I can take a few hours to spend on self-care. And I've noticed a massive change in it. But again, we can sometimes feel, or in general, I know I used to, I don't anymore, I'm over that one now, but I used to almost feel guilty about spending time on self-care, because you think I should be doing, we're in such a doing place, aren't we? Everything's about do, we've got to do. And I'm busy being busy, yet like when you say what you do in the mornings of, yes, read a chapter, I'm audible, so I'll listen. I'll do my meditation, I'll do my workout, I'll even have a sauna and then have a chill and then go. And I have found personally that I'm far more productive like that, without spending that time on self-care. But then it's pointless doing the self-care if you're going to feel guilty, because it's not going to have the same effect, is it?
So one thing we have to realize when it comes to that, to help us like feel less guilty about it, is if we're constantly pouring our cup into other people, eventually our cup's going to run out. And then we can't continue to pour into other people because our cup is empty. So that self-care is us pouring back into our cup so we can pour the cup for other people.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And do you find, have you seen a difference between, I know, so I obviously work mainly with women. Do you work mainly with men or both?
Men.
So I wonder if there's a difference to how men feel about taking time out for themselves versus women. Do you find that many men still feel guilty or less?
Oh, they absolutely do. Because what society tells us men is you can really only feel 2 things, and that's anger and happy. Right? You're not allowed to be afraid of things. You have to be the protector. You have to be that white knight, and you're not allowed to feel sad because nobody's going to help pick you up. So we don't. So we just focus on those 2 emotions, anger and happiness, that we stop taking care of ourselves. And we get to a point where it's taboo to even say, hey, I'm taking care of myself today. I know I heard somebody the other day at my work, they said, hey, my wife and I, we get a pedicure like once a month. I feel like he was expecting me to criticize him or be like, what? That's weird. But I was like, that's awesome. That's great. You're taking care of yourself. That's an amazing thing. Like, you shouldn't be afraid to share the fact that you're taking care of yourself. And I think as men, we don't have that. We feel like it's a weakness to be vulnerable in front of other people. So we don't share much about ourselves. We just share what we want other people to know about us. We shield ourselves off to any type of vulnerability.
Yeah, I can see that. This is why I think even throughout the lockdown, I think the men suffered more. I know that's a blanket statement. So I'm saying in general, what I saw then is men suffered more because, again, I think because of society, the pressures that have been put on them by society too, like you say, you can't look vulnerable, you can't look weak, you can't look upset by this. And because of that, I think they suffered more, whereas women would, we're used to moaning about things. We're used to going for coffee and we get it out more. Whereas, again, I'm no expert, but I'm just, from what I've seen, men can hold it in more because of these pressures of trying to put up a good front in front of people because, yes, they've got to be the provider and the this and the that. Is that what you found?
Yeah, absolutely. If you were to look at women versus men, how many women do you know they, like you said, go out for coffee and you guys just vent, talk about what the struggles and things that you're dealing with your girlfriends or whatever. But if a man was to go talk to another man about the same exact thing, like, there's a little, what do you do? That's not very common. We don't do that enough. We should do that more. We should be able to find that trust and that vulnerability in ourselves and with others. But it's something that men are just lacking in, that women are just very superior in when it comes to that.
Yeah, so it's help. So that's all going to help with, because otherwise they're just going within and they're putting too much pressure onto more stories being told in their head, and definitely going to go towards more of the victim mindset. Would that be right?
Oh yeah.
So what are the guys got to do to change this?
Again, it comes down to finding ways to love yourself is probably, I would say, like the number one thing. Just find a way to love yourself, because it's so easy to pour your cup, like we've been saying, pour your cup to everybody else, that you forget to pour something in your own cup. So you have to find a way to begin to love yourself, and that energy is just going to transpire in the rest of your life. One other thing we mentioned was the social media, and how it's so easy to just get glued into your phone. We have to set boundaries for that. Set those boundaries of, okay, I'm only going to look at it during this time and not during this time, because that way I'm not so reactive with everything that's going on. So when it comes to dinner time, I'm going to eat with somebody, my phone is off, you put it away. Don't be on your phone, and be present in the moment. And you're going to start feeling that love, even if you don't really realize it. If you're not necessarily paying attention to it, you'll start to feel, oh, like you feel clear. You're not focused on, hey, I have to do this and this, because our to-do list can get so long. You're just focused on, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy this moment. I'm going to be present. I'm going to be grateful for this moment. Being grateful to sit here and eat with someone, or if it's eating by yourself, the same thing. You're just be present in the moment, enjoy what you're doing.
And again, it sounds so simple, and it is that simple. We tend to overcomplicate it. Really, what you just said there just sums it up: be in the present moment. Really, that's really all we need to say for any of it, right? For any of it, just be in the present moment, because you've got no problems in the present moment. Nothing. You either deal with what's in front of you, or you don't. There's just there is no. It's nothing. But we are, again, it is down to our conditioning. We're either living in the past, or what's worse is living in an imaginary, because it's totally imaginary if it's future, because it's not yet happened. And again, this is the issue. We're constantly distracted from the present moment. And I suppose that this is the flip side. There's yin yang, there's everything, isn't there? So these apps and the phones, they are good for some things and not so good for the others. But because of all these distractions, we seem to be constantly taken out of the now, which isn't serving us, is it? The take from today is a bit of self-care. Take time for yourself, meditate, and really be in the present moment as often as you can. Set boundaries. Boundaries. Because, yes, otherwise it's just too easy to be distracted. So what is it you're helping guys? Who are your sort of target audience? How are you helping? Who are you helping?
So the young men that I help are of the ages of 15 to 25. So that's the high school to college range, or if they're not going to college, they're doing an apprenticeship, or they don't know what to do. They're in that middle ground limbo area of what do I do with my life. That's who my focus is, because it's easier to start building that foundation when you're younger than waiting till you're third, like my age, 30, 40, whatever, and you have all this stuff and now you're like, okay, I have to knock this trauma down, I have to knock this trauma down. You could start earlier, start sooner, create that growth mindset and build up from that point from there. And then again, we focus on goals, vision boards, habits, routines. Like, how do we make this a consistent thing? So, because it's never going to be an overnight thing, it's a daily practice of, I need to get through this, because it's so easy to just go back to what's familiar. And you have to fight yourself when it comes to going back to what's comfortable, because you need to challenge yourself to create a new comfortability with being challenged.
Yeah, sure. And this is why I've always said this, that why this stuff isn't taught in schools is beyond me. It's like we're still in the Victorian age. I think somebody forgot to tell them that we've moved on.
Yeah.
and, it's, we're in 2023. Mind you, now with AI, I'm wondering whether school is going to be just obsolete now.
The AI is definitely going to make things interesting.
It's going to be interesting. Yes, very good word. It's going to be interesting to find out what happens next, because I'm like, oh my goodness, if I was a kid now, I'd be like, woohoo. I feel sorry for the teachers. It's just going to be, oh, I don't know. What have you found that's so 15 to 25? That's a different age group to, I think, anybody that I usually deal with. I suppose we're quite often dealing with people older. And I've often wondered how the youngsters are taking it, because I don't know whether I would have listened when I was 15. Would I have listened to it? Because it is so different. It's so little bit out of the getting outside the box. How have you found the youngsters taking this sort of concept on and working with it?
I think it stems from, how do you get them to buy into what it is that you're asking them to do? How do you get them to be like, you know what, I do want this growth mindset. I don't want to be here dealing with life happening to me. I want to change that to life happening for me. So if you they're very susceptible to changes, because it's a lot easier to do it because you don't have the years of doing the same thing. If you just started a bad habit a year ago, it's a lot easier to fix that habit now than if you have 15 years worth of that one habit, that, oh wait, now I got to change this whole habit, like the thing that I've been doing my whole life. So I think they're much more susceptible to the changes when they're willing to make the change themselves. And I've definitely found some people who are very they want a better life. And I think seeing where you're at and seeing the family that you have, sometimes you recognize, this is what I do want or what I don't want. And if you make that realization early, you can start focusing on, how do I make those changes? How do I make the life that I want actually happen?
And have you found that actually they get results quicker because they are younger and they haven't got so much of the old program hasn't been running so long? Have you noticed a difference?
I say they do pick that up quicker. They see, they're like, oh, especially if they see you as somebody who is trying to help them and not criticize them for who they are. You're not that outside counselor or that outside peer that they see at school or something. It's somebody who's in a completely different environment, who, as I've explained, like, I went through it myself. So I have experience of going through that. And so I can share the things that I've built in my own life that helped me get through that. And it makes it easier for them to be like, oh, you know what, that sounds like a good idea. And they are able to make that a little bit quicker than I would say that an older person would be able to.
So for you, when you made the decision to do this, so you would have been, I'm sure you're reading a chapter a day now. I'm sure you've read a lot of self-development books. What would have been your favorite, would you say, up till now?
So there's three different ones for three different reasons. If I were to start off with building my foundation, I would start off with Atomic Habits by James Clear. because he focuses against essentially on that foundation of, hey, create a habit. This is how you create a habit. And it's very in depth of habit stacking where, oh, I already have this habit. Let me attach a habit to it so I can actually consistently do it. And just understanding really almost the science of a habit, which you don't really think of. You're like, oh, a habit is something I have to do every day, but there's a lot more to it than just that. And this book really just spells it out. It's one of the few books I've read multiple times. And then I would pair that with Limitless by Jim Quick, because it focuses specifically on the brain and things maybe we don't necessarily think about, like what are good foods to eat that are actually healthy for our brain. How do I speed read? Like in the book, he actually explains how you speed read, and it's very capable for any person if you just follow the instructions. And then one on a kind of a different angle is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, where he focuses, one of his main topics that he talks about is the 40% rule, which means we only use 40% of our brain power at any time. And so when we believe that, let's say we're going to go run a marathon, it's so easy to just at mile 5, mile 10, you're like, man, I don't want to keep doing this. But what you don't realize is you're actually only at 40% of your brain. And so if you start pushing through that, you start realizing, wow, you could go longer and longer because you just have to break through that barrier.
And so many people don't. They stop at the first hurdle. That seems to be the common thing. So I suppose it's about teaching people resilience, but how do you teach people resilience? Because yeah, you know that you can break through and you can do so much more. You're capable of so much more. But the sad thing is that yeah, people give up too soon. So how do they get through that? How would you
So
teach resilience?
it,
So I know it's a slightly different subject, but it's all part of the same thing, isn't it? We've got to learn to
Mhm.
be more resilient.
So I actually came to this realization, maybe I think it was last week, of how resilient I am. And the way that I realized that is, what have you actually gone through? Think about all the things that you've already gone through, all these hard things that you went through, the challenges that you've already faced. And guess what? You're still here. You're still kicking it. You're still pushing. And you can, if you've already done all of that, what's going to stop you now? There's so many bad things have happened to us in our past. Sometimes we don't want to deal with it. But once we actually look at it, we acknowledge it, we realize, wow, we're really good. We're way better than what we think. Like we can keep pushing through all this. You just have to make the realization of, this happened to me. I'm still alive and I can continue. I might, hopefully I get another day tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. And when I do, I know that I can handle anything because I handled this situation that happened before me.
So again, I suppose it's a bit similar to really having a check-in of a night and going over what you've achieved and giving yourself a pat on your back. And yeah, again, if we go back to the fitness analogy, is that you said this right at the beginning about you don't notice the small changes, which is so important for people to take before and after photos. Because yes, as we go on our journey, if we're making small progress, but every day you're looking at yourself every day, you're not seeing, you can't see the changes. And then people can get 8 weeks down the road and they might have changed phenomenally, but they're not feeling it because they're just going by, I don't know, the week before or something. And you've got to go back and look at where you came from. And I
Mhm.
suppose that again is something that's not really spoken about because, yeah, we seem to, again, not everybody, but it seems to be a common thing. You're just going by, oh, I still can't get into these jeans. I've been in these jeans for a long while. Hang on a minute. You were once upon a time in those jeans. So actually, you have come far, but we compare ourselves to this, to where we are then, and forget that, yeah, actually, it's a good thing to recap, go back and have a look. Actually, look what I've achieved from here.
And I think in that instant, when we actually focus on, let's say, the gene size, the thing we forget about is you're actually probably in a healthier position in the last couple weeks that you actually started working out, doing whatever, because you realized, hey, I now have this more education on, this is a better way to eat. This is a better way to take care of myself. And so that yeah, you may have been able to fit in something beforehand, but maybe you didn't realize, hey, this is how you work out, and I'm actually stronger now. I'm healthier now. Just because my pant size is a little bit bigger, let's not negate all this other progress that I've made in my life.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It can be complete body transformation. So, other than books, what are some of your biggest influences?
I would say number one is Lewis Howes. His podcast is The School of Greatness, and I started listening to it. I think it was August of 21, so it was right before I got out of the military. And I was like, "Wow, how have I never heard of this? This is amazing!" And there's so much. It's so knowledge packed, and it's not just one thing. It's just how do you be the greatest version of yourself, essentially. So it's new topics: spiritual, financial, health, mindset, literally anything that you can come up with. Like he'll bring experts. It's not just him talking. He'll bring an expert on finances. He'll bring in professors or PhD candidates, whatever. Like you actually get the expert opinion of people.
Oh, he has some great people. I've seen a couple with Joe Dispenza
Yep.
on with him. He's great. Yeah, love it.
Then a couple other that I feel like are in the same realm, Jay Shetty and Mel Robbins. Jay Shetty like focuses on like relationships, and again he's meditation and a mindset part of things. And there are a lot of things where you don't really look at things. It helps open your eyes to a new way of looking at things. What he recently said was, we have the five love languages, right? We don't talk about how we fight in relationships, and that changes everything. One person can fight where I need this resolved right now. The other person might need a little bit of time to actually think about it and then come back, and then you guys work through it. And if you're not on the same page of how you guys fight, things are just going to get worse.
Yes. Yes. Again,
Uh,
I can relate to that.
Mel
And
Robbins,
Mel, she's great. Mel, she's great. She's great.
she's like the almost the in between of Lewis and Jay, in the sense of she gives you like all these expert advice about relationships, about yourself, and there's like the science behind it too. And she gives you the new techniques. Like I love her a 5 second rule and the high five habit. Like those two are honestly really important lessons that people should really apply to their life.
And they work.
Yep.
You say to yourself, 5, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, out. Just get up, just do it.
Yep.
And I suppose it's all about, because otherwise we can allow that old programming in to, I'll just stay another 10 minutes. No, get up, do the thing that you need to do. 5 second rule. Great influencers. Yes, love them all. So for the listeners out there, if they're watching this via YouTube or on social media, they can see all your links. They can see the show notes, see links to you and everything. But if people are just listening and they'd like to have a chat, or they'd like to come and find out what it is you're doing, how do they get in touch with you?
So I have my main website, which is mattfindora.com. I have my blog on there. That's how I begin my coaching, discovery calls, things of that nature. Then I have my social media. I'm mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram, both of them, Matt Findora. Anybody reaches out to me there, I reach back. I try not to ignore people because that's just rude. Nobody wants that. I'm willing to have a conversation with almost pretty much anybody just to have that conversation, that connection.
Fantastic. And so how do you work? How do you work with people? Do you just one-to-one? Do you do group? Do you have a complete program? How do you work?
So I work one-on-one. I have a 6-month program that I do, focusing on the things that we discussed. Eventually, once I get enough people and I kind of cement what it is that I know works, then we'll go into group coaching, because it's great to hear other people who have made similar changes in their life. Because one of my main points is surround yourself with greatness, because your environment has such an impact on you. So if you want to get rid of this victim mindset, if you change your environment and you find people who are trying to better themselves, you're going to be one of those people. And you're like, you know what? They're all doing better. I love where you're at. I want to be better too. So surround yourself with greatness, and group coaching would do that for them.
Yeah. And it's a bit of accountability, because also it is just that, oh, they're doing it, so all right, okay, I'm going to keep up. And it does help. I don't know, I can't remember the stats, but they were pretty impressive last time I looked at the fact that, yeah, if you're doing something by yourself, to have that level of support and community goes a long way for more the long-term results and for keeping to it, regardless of what the goal is. So with you, are you helping people through specific things? Are they coming to you? What are they coming to you for?
To be the best version of themselves. If you make that realization, it's usually somebody else who, a lot of times it's going to be somebody else who points it out to you of, hey, you're doing this, we need to talk. Because if they've already made the realization of that, hey, I have this victim mindset, that's such a quick fix. Like, you can really make that realization of, oh, I'm in this position, I don't want to be in this position, I can move out. So it's usually going to be somebody else that recognizes that and says, hey, there's somebody here who could help you be that best version of yourself and take accountability, find your purpose, and get better.
Brilliant. I truly believe that everybody needs a coach. There's a coach out there for everybody to meet them where they are at that time. Because, and again, I think that was through conditioning, was expected, or our perception could be that, oh, if we ask for help, then that in some way is saying that we failed in something, which is absolutely ridiculous. Everybody needs help. And I would challenge anybody, if you see anybody who's up there and who you think is successful in any way, shape or form, I would challenge the fact that they had help along the way. Nobody gets there by themselves, or if they do, it's a very lonely place to be. Mm-hmm. Look, thank you for your time, Matt. It's been great speaking to you, and it's great that because a lot of people I speak to is very much focused on women. So it's great to see more people out there focusing just on the men, because it is going to be slightly different, because no matter what people think, we are all this, there are differences, which is okay. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And so there are going to be different things that are going to not work better for men or women, but there are differences. And I don't think that the men are getting enough support out there. So love what you're doing. Thank you for being on here. To those of you at home, if you are a coach or a consultant or a therapist or a healer, and you would either like to be a guest or you would like to host your own show, we do have the platform Mintwave Radio. We do still have slots available. If you'd like to start your own podcast, then please reach out. You can go to KarenRobertsCoaching.com/discovery and book a call with me. Yeah, thanks once again. You enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will be back, guys, on Thursday with a coffee with Karen. So goodbye for now.
Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity